When the boat comes in.
Hello and welcome back to the When the Boat Comes In podcast. It's been a while since I've done this because recently I've had a burn myself by the name of Ethan, and he's a lovely lad. He's nearly one now. So I've had my hands full, to be honest, but now I've got a little bit of spare time, so I'm able to talk about the rest of the When the Boat Comes In episodes. I left you at the ending of Series 2, fantastic season series, probably my favourite series of When the Boat Comes In, but Series 3 is equally as good. And the first episode of Series 3, A House Divided, Channing is after the person who destroyed Mandrake Place, isn't he? And of course, we all know it's Jack Ford, but it's quite funny the way that he's told about this, isn't it? He's told by Arthur Ashton.
If I understand your husband correctly, Mandrake Place has been destroyed.
You do, and it has.
Totally.
From what I've been told, there is not one stone left upon another.
God.
Channing goes to visit Manners, and he tells him that he didn't do it, it was Jack. And it's a very good episode, actually. As first episodes go, a lot happens in this first episode of When the Boat Comes In. First thing to say about Lady Caroline, she's a new actress in this, a different actress from the first two series. I do think the first Lady Caroline was better, that's my own personal opinion, but the replacement wasn't too bad at all, really. It's quite interesting, at the start of the episode, they do the same scene again, or rather they've added her into the scene of Jack and everybody else blowing up Mandrake Place, and she's there. And it's as if she was always there. Pretty clever back then, to be honest, if you're thinking this was done in the 70s. But of course, I do think the original Caroline was better. She just seemed a bit more royal, a bit more... They seemed like very two different characters to me, the original Lady Caroline and the replacement. But she wasn't bad.
My daughter doesn't own an acre of land round here. Not a rood, not a rod, pole or purge.
But she did, Your Grace. Until recently, she sold the lot to a man called Ford, who I'm told is a close friend.
You're remarkably well informed. Who told you?
Sir Horatio Manners. I may say he's deeply shocked by what has happened.
Is he indeed?
Why are you here, Channing?
I am trying to establish who was behind this outrageous piece of vandalism.
And then?
My association will prosecute.
You seem to be suggesting that Daddy and I are somehow involved.
I hope not, for your sakes. You wouldn't want to get caught up in the stink this will raise.
Ring the bell. Toby will see you out.
Another flavour of this episode is that Jack promises Dolly a divorce. Of course, Tom and her had a fling, and back then you couldn't get a divorce easy, and Jack's doing a very good thing for them, because back then he could have denied it, and then they never could have got married, and they would have had to have lived the rest of their lives in sin. But because Tom and Jack are marrows, he wants to sort it out for him. It is quite funny later on in the series, though. I remember Jack, when he eventually ends up with Dolly, he's like, that's your problem now. It's kind of like that, isn't it? But I feel very sorry for Tom in this series, because he doesn't want to be a shopkeeper, does he? And his dad's trying to push him into that direction, or rather he's trying to push Dolly into that direction, and he wants him to push him about. And he doesn't want to do it, does he? He's very happy as a gardener, but eventually he does end up working for his dad, doesn't he? I think it's a combination of emotional blackmail and very clever from Bill as well.
You set it all up. You did a damn sight more than I did, Tom. I'll get started on that divorce the first chance I get.
Word of honour, Jack.
Dolly. Word of honour. Now here's to you. Mr. and Mrs. Seaton.
Bill Seaton is, of course, thinking about owning another shop, so then he'll have 3 corner shops, giving him a little bit of a monopoly in Tyneside, or rather in Galashield. It is interesting with Galashield. I'm not obviously a northerner, I'm not from Newcastle, but the way this series was done, it made me believe that this place was a real place. But when you look it up, it was actually a fictional town or a fictional city, which I'm quite surprised at, to be honest. But with Bill, he gets his wife, of course, Bella, to take him to this shop, and it's miles away. And Billy says to her, "You're dead beat," because obviously a woman of her age pushing him about in a wheelchair just won't do. And this goes back to what I was saying with his son. He needs his son. He needs Tom Seaton, doesn't he, to push him about. And obviously Tom isn't that thrilled about it. He prefers being a gardener, having a profession, doing his own thing. But it's a combination of emotional blackmail, as I was saying, and also being very clever on Bill's part. And it's amazing how Bill's character totally changed throughout the series. To begin with, he was a pitman, wasn't he? And he was very much a socialist. And then he gets into being a person who works at the shop, at the corner shop, and he changes his outlook, really, doesn't he? He decides to go for capitalism because that's his world at that time. Back then, when he was a miner, he was a socialist, and now he's a capitalist. It's great, the politics in When the Boat Comes In, isn't it, I think? Very interesting as well. And it just makes for a great drama, to be honest. And with Bill, though, he's very clever with his money. He's very tight with his money, isn't he? But in a good way, I think. But eventually, as Bella keeps saying, they want to do something with their money. And Bella's idea is to own their own house, which they've never been able to do. They haven't moved away from their original house. That's where one of the shops is. But this other place, they had another shop already, didn't they? Mrs. Turnbull, I think her name was. But she was very religious, and that was funny when he made her do a prayer about stealing, and because he thought she would have a hand in the till a little bit. But he needs a family member to run this next corner shop, and that will be not Tom. It's going to be of course, his wife, isn't it? It won't be Tom because he hasn't got the mind for it, he says. He hasn't got the brain. So it's going to be Dolly. After all this, imagine she's going to be running a shop.
I thought ignorance of the law was no excuse.
It isn't, but there's no danger of Channing prosecuting Tom. I'll make sure of that.
Oh, you will you? And what makes you so sure that he'll listen? Arthur, I swear to God, if you've shopped our Tom,
Well, go on, finish it.
I can't. I just hope you haven't, that's all. What on earth made you do it, anyway?
Somebody would have told Channing. Why not me? I'm a member of the association, after all. No, that's sophistry.
Let's have the truth, then.
I wanted whoever was responsible punished, and that did not mean Tom.
Who, then? Sir Horatio Manners?
Obviously.
But he wasn't the one who fired the charge, was he? Jack Ford did that. Does Manners have to be punished and all?
That will be up to the magistrate.
Of course, Roddy is not happy that Jack has blown up Mandrake Place, this masterpiece by Vanbrugh. He's like that, isn't he? He's very la-di-da. And as we find out later, he's a homosexual. And this kind of works to Jack's advantage, to be honest. But we'll talk about that when it happens. Channing visits Jessie Seaton and Arthur Ashton. Or rather, Jessie isn't a Seaton anymore, is she? But you know what I mean. And yeah, it turns out that Arthur kind of implicated Jack, but didn't. He said that it was, of course, Horatio Manners, and it's really set up well, this, isn't it? The first episode of this series, you've also got Billy Seaton, and he comes home and he says that Dr. Stoker is dying of cancer. He eventually does die, and he has to take over the practice. And, of course, he doesn't get any money for it. He works at this clinic, a free clinic for people who can't afford healthcare, because back then you couldn't. I mean, that's incredible to think that, isn't it? Back then there was no NHS. You had to pay to go and see a doctor. So it was a great thing he did.
Left it a bit late if he wants to preserve Mandrake Place.
He knows that, Jack. But he's got some sort of legal power, you see. If people damage architectural masterpieces, he can have them prosecuted, put in jail.
Where did you hear all this?
Arthur's in the society. Channing came to see him.
You saying Arthur shocked me?
Not directly, no.
Let's have it, Bunny lass.
He sent Channing to see Sir Horatio Manners. What'll Manners do, Jack?
Shot me if he has to.
Can he? It was his land, after all.
Oh, yes, he could shot me. Depends how much is in it for him.
There's more in this than just you.
Your top.
You couldn't have done it without him.
There's Matt and all.
Your two best friends.
They're out of it.
How can they be?
They were never there.
Somebody must have seen them.
Oh, Lady Caroline, maybe. She won't split.
What's interesting about this episode is that Lady Caroline gives Jack some information about Roddy, that he's had flings with other men, and he uses it against Roddy instead, her family member, instead of Channing, which she thought he would do. But it was the smart move by Jack, eventually. But yeah, that's interesting with Caroline. That's the first time Jack crosses Lady Caroline. Before that, you could even perhaps see them getting together, potentially. You know, they always had a sort of a thing, didn't they? But from that moment on, it kind of went sour. And it kind of doesn't help that it's the same actress. It's a different actress, rather. It might have been better if it was the same actress, but obviously they had to change the actress for whatever reason. I still think she did a good job, but not as good as the original Lady Caroline. I really love Matt Headley and, of course, Sarah in this episode. Of course, Jack's going to be moving out and they're going to be living together, but at the moment they're kind of keeping it secret that they're living together because they're not married. Back then, of course, you couldn't do this. Now, you know, it's not a taboo, is it? But back then it was. And they have some great scenes together, Sarah and Matt. And Matt's still worried about taking on the job at the Fitters Union. He doesn't think he can do it. He calls the job his job, my job, talking about Jack being the boss, but he needs to take this by the horns, and eventually he does. And he's a great union boss, isn't he? I mean, Jack was the clever one, but Matt was all the heart, wasn't he, really? Another scene I really like is when Jesse visits Jack, and of course this isn't just about him, is it? Yeah, he's going to get into trouble for blowing up Mandrake Place, but there's also her brother Tom, and there's also Matt Headley, so they're going to get in trouble as well if Jack goes down for this. And Arthur's implicated all of them in a way. He has, even though he said it was Manners. Eventually Manners says it was Jack, and then they've got to find out about all the other people who were involved. So Jesse goes to visit Jack to talk about that, and Jack says to her, Jessie Seaton, why did I ever let you go? And that's a great scene. And of course, later on in this series, it's very sad what happens to Jessie. I won't talk about it yet, but yeah, that's a tough episode to watch, episode 3. My Bonnie Lass Goodbye. We'll talk about that when that comes up. But the first episode of Series 3, I think this is one of the best of Series 3, to be honest. I think it's a fantastic episode. It sets it up really well. Of course, you've got the investigator Channing trying to go after Jack Ford. You've also got Lady Caroline giving Jack some information about Roddy and his activities back then. Because, of course, being a homosexual back then was illegal. You could go to prison for this. Yeah, I think Jack says to him later that you could go to prison for 7 years if you don't do what I say. So he uses this piece of information to dramatic effect, doesn't he, Jack, later on. But this is a great episode.
I still say you can't prove a thing.
Private detectives, Roddy, the best money can buy. They'll come up with enough dirt to stick. Well, won't they?
They always do. Who betrayed me?
A bird, Bonnie lad. A bird that sang my tune.
Partners in crime?